The Nerdcast News Report is on the air for Friday. I have Monday on my sheet, so we're already off to a good start. Friday, January 31st, 2025, and we are back for our second edition of the Nerdcast News Report. I am Matt in the studio. Great to have you along with us, and it's going to be a wrestling-centric episode of this Nerdcast News Report as we get ready for the Royal Rumble coming up on Saturday, tomorrow, 24 hours away in Indianapolis, Indiana. One of my favorite events of the year, and really looking forward to talking all things WWE on this edition of the Nerdcast News Report. And here to join me to do that is Mike. Mike, how's it going?
It's going. We have reached the end of the week. I'm pretty excited about that. Big wrestling weekend, a lot of wrestling news to cover. Also stuff on the other side. We got OhioCon this weekend, so should be some interesting stories coming out of that for next week. But let's get into it. Yeah,
evidently, Nabashin already got a chance to hang out at the Dayton International Airport for a little bit of extra time. It is a beautiful airport. We've flown out of there before, but so really interested to see what comes out of OhioCon this weekend. But we're going to talk wrestling stuff today as we get ready for the Royal Rumble. And again, the plan, as long as the technology works out, is to do a live watch-along tomorrow of the Royal Rumble at 6 p.m. Eastern, and it should be a very interesting event. Let's get to some other news headlines before we talk a little bit about the Royal Rumble. And probably one of the biggest headlines of this week was the news that came out at the WWE Town Hall meeting when Paul Triple H Levesque was going through whatever he was going through at the town hall and was then interrupted by Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker. And the two of them basically surprised him by letting him know that he was going to be the headliner for this year's class of the WWE Hall of Fame. Of course, he's already been in the Hall of Fame as a member of D-Generation X. I'm a little surprised he wasn't already in as an individual member, 14-time world champion, winning the WWE Championship 9 times and the World Heavyweight Championship 5 times, on top of many main events, a lot of classic matches and moments. Like I said, the biggest surprise out of all this is that he hadn't gotten in, but like you mentioned this week, the timing of kind of when he was forced to retire and everything was going on with the company at the time almost makes it make sense that maybe it didn't line up for him to get in as an individual.
Yeah, I think kind of historically, once you're in the Hall of Fame, that was always kind of WWE's indication that, hey, we're winding you down. I think Rey Mysterio is probably the first real counterexample to that. I mean, we've had others like Edge, but when he was inducted, it was kind of presumed that was the end of his career. So it wasn't like, hey, man, we're going to induct you, and 10 years later, you're still going to be wrestling. That was never really the thought. So I can only assume he just wasn't interested, because up until his heart condition and kind of where he is now, he wasn't really looking at the finish line. I mean, guys had the title 14 times. Like, it wasn't crazy to think then they could have snuck a few more title reigns in for the guy, and he could have ended up tying or exceeding the record. But it's amazing when you think back to watching WWF in the mid-90s or even WCW prior to his arrival in WWF. But to think that guy would not only be a Hall of Famer, but also kind of the creative mind behind some of your favorite wrestling over the last 10 years. It's really mind-blowing. Like, you wouldn't have been able to pick that out back in 1995. There's no way in the world, but the guy certainly deserves it. What else can you really say about the guy? I know a lot of people, and kind of the comments that came out from Chris Jericho kind of talking about the Hall of Fame being fake and whatnot, and he would turn it down, much like certain rock bands didn't want to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. All Hall of Fames are fake. That's just the reality of it. They, even those with physical locations, the actual selection process of the Hall of Fame comes down to people's opinions. And that's all it is. I think where you get meaning from it is kind of that shared moment with the other people that are a part of it, and kind of that connection with the fans. I mean, you saw in the video of Triple H getting that announcement that he was going to be inducted. It's like kind of the moments between Shawn Michaels, and The Undertaker. that feels real, even if the hall itself is kind of a fabrication.
Yeah, for sure. There are very few halls of fame over the world of sports, if you will, that are anything but a vote. I mean, I think the Golf Hall of Fame is one of the few exceptions where it's like if you do this and this and this and this, you're in. Like it's just once you meet those like X number of majors and all that stuff, you just get in. But even then, like somebody at some point voted on those rules and decided like, hey, if you meet these criteria, you're going to be in the Hall of Fame. So yeah, it is fake. And in the end, it is always going to be a popularity contest within WWE. It's going to be people that are obviously on good relationships with WWE, and it's going to be people that they think the fans will be interested in coming to see because it is part of WrestleMania weekend. So it is another event that you're looking to attract your crowd to. So you want to put people in that people are excited for. And, you know, I think the real question will be somewhere down the line, and maybe after his passing, it's hard to say, whether if this run of WWE continues, if Paul Levesque won't get in again as a figurehead, as a boss of the company, because you know we're not even considering everything he's done since he's taken over. Yeah, the lead of creative and everything that has improved with WWE, and then not to even discount his run as the head of creative in NXT, and arguably maybe one of the best times in NXT history. So. You know, this is kind of wrapping up his in-ring career, but I think you could argue that there is an out-of-ring career that may also end up being Hall of Fame worthy.
And I think that was part of the confusion, too, with the announcement, because it seems like the render that they're using for his induction is corporate, you know, head of talent relations, head of creative, whatever his current title is. It's that Triple H that's on the graphic, where really it should be, you know, the game. It should be the wrestler during the you know late 90s and 2000s that's the guy we're celebrating in theory, unless they're just all kind of combining it into one big thing. I don't really know.
And it could be that he was just like, look, like if we're going to do this, let's just go ahead and do this as me and not, you know, just the wrestler, so you guys can't come back in 10 years if we have more record profits and decide that I need to go in again as a creative director. Like, let's just incorporate all that into one and be done with it. You know, it is great to see. Obviously, you know, I don't know if I was as big a fan of him. I always appreciated his work as a wrestler, but, you know, his job was for a lot of years to be the evil guy. And, of course, you know, as he began a first on-screen and then off-screen relationship with Stephanie McMahon, he gained more power in the company, and the company wisely used that as a storyline to make him more hated. The stuff in DX obviously was incredibly entertaining and kind of got him on the map and really allowed him to separate himself from that blue blood character that got his career started. But you know, when you watch some of these old Royal Rumbles, which we've been doing this week, it's just amazing that guy that came over from WCW is now maybe one of the most beloved figures in the entire company.
Yeah, it's really incredible and kind of funny when you consider, when you look at WWE's kind of survival through the mid-90s when they pivoted to the Attitude Era. You always kind of felt like there was real creative contribution from both Triple H and Shawn Michaels, and to see kind of where they are now, where, you know, one is kind of running Raw and SmackDown and the other's running NXT, and both seem to be enjoying a great deal of success. You just think maybe these guys really do have some sort of creative mind that maybe the power structure in WWE was lacking for quite a while now.
I think anytime you do anything creative for so long, I think it's inevitable you're going to become stale, and that clearly was what the product had become. On top of many other behind-the-scenes issues with the way the company was run. Now it's like you hear nothing but good things, and it's not to say it's great for everybody or that everybody ends up in a great situation, but it is, I think, great for most.
Better for a large quantity of them.
Yeah, and it's just a better place to go work, and I think that's been a credit to Triple H, Nick Khan.
Well, I've said it in the past. I think where we are now, I have emotionally invested in way more wrestlers on WWE programming than probably ever at any one given time. And that's just a testament to them doing what they can to not just let people meander.
For sure. And well-deserved, Paul Levesque, Triple H, going into the WWE Hall of Fame. He will be the headliner of this class. The question is, who else goes in? There's a story, everybody wrote a story, basically, about who might get into the Hall of Fame. You see a picture of Haku jump up there. And there's, everybody kind of speculating who might be that guy, or, who's next to be in the Hall of Fame class, because you do kind of believe with Triple H running it now and without Vince there to veto guys, he might just be like, I'm never doing business with you. It does open the door maybe for some guys that either got blacklisted because of being in the concussion lawsuit, or just kind of forgotten to time. Maybe it's now their time to go into the Hall of Fame. Just curious your thoughts on maybe one or two guys that could be next on that list.
Yeah, it's funny because I started thinking of names before looking at any of the articles pertaining to it. And it's funny how many names you come up with that you then look at the article and you're like, oh, you guys totally agreed with me. Okay, cool. I think you have to look at it as, how many headliners do you want? Like, you have Triple H at the top. Like, for years now, we've been wondering when someone like Batista's going to get in, but do you have him go in the same year as Triple H? I
probably not.
To me, it's like, you have your headliner now. Who do you put underneath that? And I think there's a couple names that jump right out because, one, when you think of Triple H, you think of the people that are kind of within his inner circle, and I think someone like William Regal makes a lot of sense.
For sure.
That article had the picture of Haku. I think that's an obvious one too, given his sons are all within WWE now. You have this perfect kind of setup for them to be the ones to induct him. And he's a guy that I don't think ever really got to shine to the degree that he probably should have back in the day in WWE. I think the way they treat Samoans and Tongans in WWE now is really incredible. And I think if that had been the case 30 years ago, that guy would have been huge.
Yeah, I think those are really good choices. That article also mentions Brian Pillman.
Yeah.
I think that would make a lot of sense with his son doing so well in the company now. And you start looking at that list of people in the concussion lawsuit, because you do feel like a few years on, maybe you try to mend fences with some of those people before they pass away. And to me, if you're looking for a tag team to induct, Demolition makes a ton of sense. Yeah. I think Axe and Smash, they were both as babyface and heel. And if you want to throw Crush in there too, I'm totally good with that.
Throw Fuji in there with them.
Yeah, for sure. They first obviously as heels, then as baby faces, they were way over with the crowds. Did a great job. And, as one of the articles mentioned, they were really on top until Legion of Doom was brought in, and then they kind of usurped their popularity, and then Demolition kind of started on the way down. But Demolition would be a great choice. The Powers of Pain would also be a very solid option, another tag team that was in that concussion lawsuit. I did not realize that the Barbarian is also Tongan, so that's another tie to that situation. So, I think Batista, to me, should be in, but probably should be the top of the card. I don't think he should go in under Triple H, unless they just want to go in together, because obviously they're buddies, so that would be fine. But I think there's plenty of candidates, and WWE Hall of Fame weekend is always a really cool event because you also get a lot of ancillary content, and I think this is an opportunity to continue to try to bring people back that maybe. They've done a really good job of that, bringing people back, putting them in the front row of events, making them feel like they're important. For a lot of years, this company kind of used veterans to put other people over and kind of make them look stupid.
It was weird in the past because you almost felt like, despite the fact that Vince McMahon was the one who booked all of this for years, it was almost like he would poke fun at the people that he booked and the way he booked them once they became legends. It was really strange.
There's so many things about the way that was handled that just does not make any sense. But
one other thing about the Hall of Fame, I think, talking about Regal being a potential inductee, you kind of look at people who are currently with the company and kind of still in their prime to some degree, if not maybe on the back end. What about someone like a Michael Cole?
Yeah.
I mean, he certainly deserves it. Lillian Garcia having come back, I think she's someone who deserves to be in as well.
Well, and if you're getting down that road, at some point you need to get some officials into the Hall of Fame. I mean,
absolutely.
The Hebners probably deserve to be in. Charles Robinson, if you're going to start with one who's on good terms with your company. The guy is universally loved, still one of the hardest working guys in the company. That would actually make a lot of sense. I don't know exactly where he's from. You might want to time his entry up with wherever in the country he's actually from, probably the South. But yeah, there's, like I said, lots of great options, and it'll be interesting to see who they decide to go with. A couple other quick news items before we get to our quick Royal Rumble preview on this news episode. NXT ratings continue to soar. AEW ratings continue to drop. This from WrestleNomics. Can't show the charts on screen, but I can show you the final numbers. And NXT drawing over 800,000 viewers. Again, their rating went up. Dynamite went down to 604,000. NXT also wins in the demo. You look at the charts, and obviously we can't do that on screen, but, again, NXT has a wave where they're going up and going down and going up, but they go up to the end, whereas AEW is clearly the slide. It goes from 746 down to 518 for the overrun. At this point, it just doesn't even feel like a surprise that not only does NXT win, but they blow them out of the water.
Not only that, but you never hear anyone from that side say, hey, we beat you, which is really, really something. It's like they're not even a factor anymore. You feel bad in a way because when you look at the quarter hours for AEW, it's like on paper, that roster still seems like it's the stronger roster between it and NXT.
For sure.
There are certainly people on that show that I would, under normal circumstances, want to watch, but when you read what they're engaged in and what's going on, I just can't bring myself to want to tune in for that.
And again, the thing that NXT does better than probably any wrestling show in the world is feature their women wrestlers. 871,000 for the Bayley and Julia versus Cora Jade and Roxanne Perez match opened the show. 842,000 for the main event with the Meta Girls wrestling for the tag team titles against Belair and Naomi. 839 for a backstage segment with Roxanne Perez, Cora Jade, and then the beginning of Ethan Page and Cedric Alexander. But not only do they feature their women, but because they've done it for so long, those end up being the highest rated segments on the show. It's amazing to see.
Yeah, it's taken a long time to reach this point where you don't really view much of a distinction between their men's segments and their women's segments. It's just part of the wrestling show. And I think it never felt like they were just arbitrarily giving them time to give them time. It always felt meaningful. It didn't feel forced. And I think that's a big deal. I over the course of a week, to me, there's no easier show to watch than NXT. Like, it just flies by. It's that perfect sweet spot between really good in-ring wrestling, people coming up and developing, and just the drama, the TV show side of it. It's sometimes it can be a little corny or cringy even to some degree, but it's all a part of this package that I thoroughly enjoy every week.
Yeah, it's still the best wrestling show on television every week, and I think part of this ratings bump could be the fact that Raw has gone to Netflix, and maybe a lot of people don't have Netflix.
Yeah.
So you've got some people just like, well, I need to get my wrestling fix, and CW is on network television, so you can get it over the air. And people who are like, SmackDown being 3 hours might be too long for me, but I can go watch NXT. It's going to end at 10 o'clock. There's no overrun. Like, it is off the air, as NXT has found out the hard way. Like, you got to be out when it's time to be out because you're going off no matter whether you're done or not.
I do think 2.5 hours is kind of the sweet spot because I think a 2-hour NXT, you still have a bit of an appetite for more, which is certainly better than the 3-hour show that you're kind of wishing ended a little sooner. Yeah, I think that there's something to that. I think it helps now. Years ago, even in the black and gold era, you could watch NXT, but it kind of felt, I don't want to say meaningless, but it felt futile in a way because ultimately it's not Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah.
And the people you're watching on NXT, more likely than not, if they were to go up to Raw and SmackDown, they wouldn't be the same guy you saw in NXT. There was that weird...
Maybe literally.
Yeah, I mean, there would be this disconnect, both in plot, and character, and gimmick, where, yeah, it'd be, if they were to go up to Raw or SmackDown, if you really wanted to, you could go back and watch some of their NXT stuff, but it really didn't have any relevance to what they were doing on Raw and SmackDown, whereas now you feel there's a cohesion between those two stages that it actually benefits you to watch NXT because you're not watching your favorite actor on a totally different show that's going to portray a different character a year from now.
I mean, it really was no different than when they would leave and go to AEW. I mean, it's basically just you're going to a totally different world, and now that's not the case, and that's why not only is NXT still great, but Raw and SmackDown are great now too. So makes a huge difference. Let's get to just a quick Royal Rumble preview, and really what we're going to talk about is surprises, because that's really what the Royal Rumble match is all about, is surprises. And I think I do want to kind of emphasize that before we get started, because I know, at least if the people that I'm going to pick win the Royal Rumble, I know there will be some consternation on Sunday, because it'll be like, oh, we're just going with the favorites to win the Royal Rumble. But that's what the Royal Rumble is for. Like, you have to understand that the joy in the Royal Rumble are the surprise entrance, the stare down / moments where somebody throws somebody out that sets up a feud that's going to carry you through WrestleMania. That's the fun part of the Royal Rumble. The winner sometimes is fun, but the bottom line is you are trying to set up half of a main event for WrestleMania, which means it's got to be the biggest of your big stars. While these both feel like there's maybe 5 to 10 people in each Rumble that you could legitimately make a case for winning, whoever ends up winning it's not going to be somebody that is just out of nowhere and wins the Royal Rumble. It's going to be one of their established main stars that they are trying to set up a major match for at WrestleMania. So people need to just go ahead and put that in their mind, because, at the end of the night, it may not be the person you wanted to win, but was it a fun Rumble? That's the way to look back. And the way it ends up being fun is surprises, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, you want the surprises, and you want the people who are the surprises, unless they're a joke surprise, you want them to have a good showing. I think when Jordynne Grace first showed up in the Women's Rumble, they made a really big point to put her over hard, make her look super impressive, and I think that the surprise itself was cool, but kind of doubly cool was the fact that they gave her a run in it. Yeah, she didn't win, but she was never supposed to win. It was really about saying, hey, you belong here, and I think that was really awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And, the one thing I was kind of surprised about, kind of looking back on it, when you look at the Women's Rumble match, is obviously Jordynne Grace had a monster run. She was in there for about 20 minutes, didn't eliminate anybody. I think that's where it's going to change for her this year. I'm not picking her to win, but I do believe she's going to be the one that's going to go in there this year and throw a bunch of people out, and that's going to be her moment this year, is like, oh my goodness, probably including maybe a mid-card champion or somebody like that, where it's like she's going to have 7 eliminations and then hang around till toward the end of the event where you could see her winning it. But it's kind of that next step in her progression, because she's going to be signed to WWE. She's going to be on their roster. So now it's time to put her over in a way that's going to allow you to build some feuds for her going forward. But I'm curious to think, if you've gone through and thought of a couple surprises that you'd like to see for this event.
For the Men's Rumble first, I was amazed just looking at the Forbes article talking about the people who are confirmed for the Rumble already, and the names are just stupid. Like, just the star power and just the level that this Royal Rumble is going to have is just something you wouldn't have ever expected. Obviously, your Reigns and Rollins, your typical guys who are kind of the front runners of this era, that's fine, but you wouldn't have thought you'd be looking at the 2025 Royal Rumble with both John Cena and CM Punk in it. Like, that's mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, there you see the list on screen of just who Wikipedia has confirmed. It's legit.
Yeah, I mean, as far as surprises go, obviously you're always going to assume that Joe Hendry might be the guy, because they've always teased his appearance in various events. With the partnership with TNA, I think that opens the door for some other people too. It's like, do you have Nick Nemeth show up? Do you have Santino Marella show up? You could do that, even if just as a joke. Someone like Moose, perhaps.
Yeah.
Otherwise, looking at NXT people, I mean, I don't know how heavy you need to have NXT involved in the Rumble, but the 3 names that jump out at me are going to be Trick Williams, Ethan Page, or Obafemi.
Yeah.
Those are obvious. Then as far as outside surprises, I don't know. I don't know yet where Aleister Black's availability sits, if he's actually able to appear yet, but that's always a possibility too.
I know I've seen some speculation saying like the AEW online roster is usually a pretty good indication as to whether somebody's still under a contract, and he is still listed on their online roster. Now, that's not to say that it doesn't expire this weekend or something, or they work something out, but knowing Tony, I would doubt that to be the case, other than I think Aleister Black has been, or Malachi Black in AEW has been pretty low key about his desire to leave. He hasn't been out there posting pictures of him in a straight jacket or anything like that. So that might change the way he's able to get out the door compared to
maybe a little more tactful, diplomatic.
For sure. Jeff Hardy would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Or even possibly both Hardys. I could see that. A name to me that's really interesting that up to this point, like the dirt sheets really haven't been able to pin down where he's going next is Josh Alexander.
Yeah.
He's a guy who's leaving TNA, and for a while, I think it would have been very safe to assume he might have been headed to AEW. It's just hard to know the way their company's going right now and what kind of money WWE might be willing to offer him. He's obviously great in ring. He's got the built-in relationship with Ethan Page that you could work some TV to get him established.
You got to think that how quickly they threw the NXT title on Ethan Page had a lot of people maybe second guessing what their future might look like. And I think the respect that WWE has shown TNA and their partnership also goes a long way for making some of these people kind of think, hey, maybe the step to WWE isn't the scary one.
Well, one other name just on the men's side to throw out there that probably a lot of people aren't thinking about, but because of when his availability kind of came open last year, it couldn't work out with him being in the Royal Rumble, but you could do it this year, is Shawn Spears. There's a lot of, everybody was wondering if he was going to be number 10 last year.
It's always a letdown when it's not Shawn Spears / Ty Dillinger.
But you got that option this year to run that back with him instead of him as this Ty Dillinger character. So that's something to keep an eye on potentially as well. On the women's side, it's interesting because they have so many talented women between their main roster and NXT that you could easily have no outside surprises.
Yeah.
Some possible outside surprises. Meiko Satomura's wrapping up her career.
That would make sense.
She would make a lot of sense. Which reminds me, on the men's side, someone like Naomichi Marufuji, who's been evidently in talks to do some stuff with WWE, could be a surprise from Japan there. Masha Slamovich would make a ton of sense because she's already been on WWE television.
Definitely one of my possible choices.
Yeah, she makes a lot of sense. Mickie James is another one who is kind of not really with anybody right now, but is also doing stuff with that WWE LFG program, so that makes sense. And then there's a lot of Diva era wrestlers that have maybe already been brought back for a Royal Rumble, or some who haven't, who you could easily bring back. Obviously, the Bellas would make a ton of sense.
I think they've kind of teased that Nikki Bella's possibly looking to revisit that era.
And it looks like the Iconics have signed on for some in-ring stuff on the independent circuit, so that leads me to believe that maybe they would be in a position to come back and do something.
They need to come back. They're right there with Chelsea Green as far as just pure entertainment that can wrestle.
Yeah, for sure. So that's kind of just off the top of my head what I'm thinking on the women's side. Obviously, NXT, you could just go down the list. There's no real bad choices in NXT. Obviously, if you get Julia to have the big grand entrance at Royal Rumble would be amazing. Vicaire, Zarya, you could. It's just, it really could go on and on. What do you have on your list for women's surprises?
Yeah, I think if you want to keep looking at TNA, I think someone like Rosemary would be a good choice.
Oh, yeah,
too.
for
I
sure.
think she's someone that we haven't really had the opportunity to see her really shine on the WWE side of things. I think she's kind of owed that, and I would love to see that. As far as NXT people, obviously the ones you mentioned are certainly possibilities. I think someone who might already be main roster ready, who definitely... she can wrestle, but has the character that even some of the women in NXT don't quite have yet, is a Jada Parker.
Yeah, for sure.
I think she's tailor-made for the main roster, and I think that would go over really well as well.
Yeah, for sure. And we didn't mention Roxanne Perez, who's kind of teetering between the main roster and NXT at this point. She almost certainly will be in, if for no other reason, in the future, further her issue with Bayley before they have their triple.
And that's almost
match.
Not even a surprise at this point.
No.
Like when you're talking about someone who's been in a Rumble already, who has made appearances on Raw and SmackDown, it's like, wouldn't be shocked at all to see her there.
Yeah, so there's lots of really good stuff. And again, that's where the fun comes in with the Royal Rumble, and we'll certainly be interested to see kind of how that shakes out. Time to wrap things up with the Empire Express. Mike, you ready to run through this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, I'll take the odds, you'll take the evens, but last four, we're going to each give us an answer on our predictions for the weekend. So we'll start out with the first one. Stephanie McMahon announced a new program called Stephanie's Places yesterday on the Pat McAfee show, working with Omaha Productions and ESPN Plus. Take a behind-the-scenes look at WWE Superstars. That means it's another outlet for WWE programming. Where do they show up next?
You know, it never ends. I can only assume now we're going to have CM Punk and his dog Larry hosting the Puppy Bowl. I think that is the next logical step. But yeah, we'll see. In a match that might steal the weekend, DIY defends their tag titles against Motor City Machine Guns. 2 out of 3 falls. Who comes out on top?
I'm kind of torn on this one. I see Motor City Machine Guns getting that big win. I think that would be a lot of fun, but also DIY's kind of got an issue with Pretty Deadly, and I think this could be an opportunity to elevate them. So I'm going to go DIY to retain to set up that issue. What do you got?
Yeah, I could go either way. I'm thinking Motor City Machine Guns, but honestly, I'm just excited to see both teams wrestle more of the teams in the future.
I think it's going to be a great event. Cody Rhodes and Kevin Owens battle in a ladder match for the undisputed WWE title. Who comes out on top?
You know, I was really hoping Owens. I think he has earned it for the work he's done, but I'm really starting to lean more toward a Cody Punk main event at Mania, so I gotta go with Cody. What do you think?
I think Cody retains as well. I would love to see it be Kevin Owens and then Zayn win the Royal Rumble. That would be, to me, a lot of fun, but I do think Cody ends up retaining.
Cody Rhodes won the 2024 Men's Royal Rumble match. Who's your pick for 2025?
I really was leaning towards CM Punk, but I'm going to go with John Cena. I think Cena coming back, going ahead and winning that lottery ticket. If I were booking it, I wouldn't do it that way, but I feel like WWE is going to do it that way to give themselves the full 3-month build to Cena being in the main event of WrestleMania. Who do you got?
Yeah, I am currently going to go Punk, but I guess really the question comes down to what's more entertaining to you, the idea of Cena having to get in via Elimination Chamber or Punk. I kind of think Punk might be the one who's going to be around more often, so maybe it makes sense pushing him off to Elimination Chamber, but we'll see.
It's also interesting.
Bayley was the winner for the women in 2024. Who do you have this year?
I have Charlotte Flair winning, and that's why I think people may be upset because Charlotte Flair elicited such a response. But to me, the vignettes have been big. Her and Tiffany Stratton is money, so I think Flair comes back and wins it. Who you got?
Yeah, that's my pick too. I can't, looking at who's been confirmed so far, knowing Flair's there, unless they're going to rush in Becky at the last minute to take it from her, which could be a possibility too. I am most certainly looking forward to Flair Stratton at Mania.
That should be a lot of fun, and that is going to wrap up the Nerdcast News Report for this Friday. A reminder that coming up tomorrow, we are going to hopefully do a live watch-along of the Royal Rumble to start about 6 o'clock Eastern Time, and then test all that technology out today and make sure it works. Either way, we will be back Sunday night, 7 o'clock Eastern Time, for another episode of Music Weekly, when we will take a look at the music of January the 17th, and then we'll be back on Monday morning at 9 a.m. to wrap up the weekend with another episode of the Nerdcast News Report. Big thanks to Rachel for joining us in the chat today. Big thanks to Mike for joining me in studio as always, and a big thanks to you for joining us wherever you may be on the Nerdcast News Report. But that's going to wrap things up. Hopefully we'll see you all tomorrow for the Royal Rumble. Until then, don't forget to join the Empire, the Nerdcast Empire.